So let's move on to these yellow ones. Now the yellow ones get into a slightly different territory. And the two that we just looked at, they had a common treatment of the light, which is to say that there was light coming in from one side, not the other, and it's a standard cross light that artists have been using for hundreds and hundreds of years. We light the apples from the left, the right is in shadow, and that's a desirable thing to have in landscape as well. And these two have it very clearly, which is why we have darker values in both of these. Then we get to these, there is no cross light. This is like front lit. This is like the whole mountain is in sunlight. So I knew this when I started. This was my intention. And it was the most challenging thing that I've ever had to do with paint and color. And it's what I was after. Eradicating the value, diminishing it almost to the point of when you squint at it, you don't see any differences in light and any differences in dark. That's what value refers to. So, well, geez, if you don't have value, what do you have? You only have color. And within color, you have differences in temperature and differences in hue. You also have differences in texture. And so there's maybe 10% of value is doing the work in these paintings, maybe a little bit more in this one. And the rest is all purely about color relationships. And so you'll see cool and warm shifts between green and yellow. In this one, which is based on Border Peak in sunlight, by the way, you can see up here, that's where I saw it. That's the peak that this painting became. I really liked its monumental shape. So what if it's far away and I can't see any of the detail? But it was enough for me to pull that and do these studies and pull this color study, which is another a digital study where I play around with the colors until it suggests a direction I want to go. Is it where I end up? No. They're quite different. But again, it's a general direction. So within this painting, there's blues, greens, yellows, oranges, and even a few hits of pink. So there's almost every color in the spectrum in there. But they're all kind of coordinated and contained by the dominating hue, which is some kind of yellow-green color. Okay? And that's essentially what's going on in all of these. In this one, Snow Peak, Early Light, this is the source photo. And this was actually up over Snoqualmie Pass. And here's where the source image comes from. It's just that small section. And here is my digital study. And you can see the digital study, again, it's hinting toward the direction I want to go. But obviously, I made changes along the way. You can't mimic life. This is like one of the biggest paradoxes that artists deal with, is that it's a flat, two-dimensional painting that reflects light, and yet we somehow want to weave this magic spell where we make it look like, or we get you to feel that, like, wow, that really looks like sunlight. Well, it's not sunlight, and it can't be sunlight. And in fact, it's impossible to make it sunlight. But this is the magical game that we play. All artists do it. And when I'm trying to negotiate the landscape or trying to really, really capture sunlight, I kind of have to bend the rules. And in this case, I substituted strong contrasts, like of dark and light, which would have expressed sunlight on the mountain. This one does that. I could have done it with strong contrast, but instead I chose to tip the scales and do it more with strong, intense colors. This is much closer to what the Impressionists did, for example, than, say, what the classical painters did, like the Dutch landscapists. They were doing it with drama, big light, big dark. And then more contemporary painters often do it with less contrast and do it more with color. So that was the thinking on these paintings. This one is the I'm going to pull it right off the wall here and pass it around. This was the first stage of this painting. Again, just to give you a little glimpse of what the painting looks like when it's just 2 hours old. And, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm holding up to the wrong painting. It's this painting. You're probably wondering, there's a question I'll ask him. What's he doing there? This painting, 2 hours old. And I was very satisfied with the design when I first did it. Even though design is typically built with value contrasts, like that's sort of the way we delineate it. Even though these have very little value contrast, the shapes of cool and the shapes of warm are very much what makes the design happen. How much real estate is given to the sky, how much real estate is given to the lights on the sides of the hill. Again, every square inch is considered. It's considered in terms of color. It's considered in terms of composition. It's considered in terms of paint application. So I'll just pass this around. I'll start over here. Yeah.
Did you say, like, squint a lot as you were mixing the colors to try and make sure that you're staying within a similar value range?
Yeah, absolutely. Squinting is something that painters do all the time. It's a way of kind of simplifying things. And I squint a lot and I stand back a lot. But the best thing I can do is just turn the painting around for a while or a couple of days and then come back and get a fresh look at it. I also turn it upside down and I also look at it in a mirror. A lot of painters do that. It's just a way of getting a fresh perspective on the painting after staring at it for so long. Especially when these paintings, I would sometimes be working on it and then I'd go take a phone call or check my email and come back 20 minutes later. It's like, what? Like it's just the color looks so different because you stare at the color for a while, your eyes adjust. So it was kind of necessary to leave and come back every once in a while. Okay, any other questions about these? Yeah?
Do you start with a white canvas or do you tone things initially?
Good question. I do start with a white panel or canvas, and I do tone it, but that copy that's going around, I tone it colors that are in alignment with my color intention, meaning I don't start with a standard burnt sienna undertone or a standard yellow ochre undertone, and that's the undertone for every painting. If every painting has a unique and distinct color light, I call it, or a color of the light, then it stands to reason that the base tone, the underpainting color, is going to somehow direct that or be in alignment with it. So my undercolor is different for every single painting. And that holds true for paintings I do in the studio, and it also holds true for paintings I do out in plein air. I respond to what's out there at the time. Anything else? Yeah?
I was just curious about your texture, because it seems to be built up in kind of flat process, or where do you...
Actually, she's commenting on, you know, it just doesn't look textural. It actually looks like there are these flat shapes. And I do it a combination of kind of the flat side of the palette knife to sort of put a flat patch on it, or sometimes it's just a juicy stroke that I let dry for a good week or more, and then I sand a little bit. I don't do that always, but sometimes I sand it down, and that creates these very interesting flat shapes. And of course, that's happening around here, and much less so as it tapers back. But it's a combination of the palette knife and brushwork and a little sanding. Sanding's a fun painting technique. Yeah. Anything else? Okay.